Welcome back to another video in my AI rabbit hole series. Now, this is a video series that goes deep down the rabbit holes of artificial intelligence. And this is going to be a fun one where we explore AI integrated within email. So, in this particular video, I'm excited to have on Richie Bonilla. Now, Richie is the founder and CEO of Forage Mail, which is an AI powered email assistant that filters low priority Gmail messages and really helps users manage kind of the overwhelming inbox that busy solopreneurs like myself tend to have. So, Richie, first and foremost, thank you so much for coming on this video of AI Rabbit Holes.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first things first, Richie, I guess, how would you define forage mail? And I guess, why should busy people like myself care about it?
Sure. Yeah. Forage is an email AI that automatically filters your email and basically solves email overwhelm. So it's able to determine what's a priority email for you. It keeps emails from real people in your inbox. It keeps other high priority notifications that you should see right away in your inbox. And then it puts everything else into a daily brief that you get once a day. It's organized, it's easy to scan, it summarizes your newsletters, and it basically is able to handle 90+% of your email, so that when you come to your inbox, no matter what, you don't have to spend time screening and filtering. You just have your actual emails there, and then you get the rest once a day. And that makes it way easier to like skim through your inbox to complete your daily inbox habit.
So the big question I would have, I guess, is twofold here. One, I couldn't vibe code a tool like that these days. And two, what is the difference between, I guess, Gemini integrated within Gmail doing some similar functionalities like that? I guess kind of just give a defense here of Forage Mail versus those other alternatives I just talked about.
Yeah, no, I think it's a reasonable question. As far as like the vibe coding question, you can definitely create a script that will pull your emails, process them, and send them. It's a whole different thing to set up like a 24/7 service that is queuing emails as they come in, handling retries and doing all of that on a 24/7 basis so that you don't have to run the script, wait for it to run, and then, be able to do your email. There's a whole bunch of other things that we can do because of that. And as we get into email processing, we're able to leverage sort of like what we see across many users' accounts in order to improve the service for you. And so, there's a possibility to vibe code it yourself or even build it yourself, but it's another thing you're going to have to build and maintain and work on versus paying us the $8 a month and then just moving on with your life. So it's like possible, but how many things can we really maintain and do? And like, do you want to spend that much time thinking about it? Whereas we're 100% focused on making this service really great. And that comes to Gemini as well, which is Gemini only does things when you ask it to. So, there's some basic Gmail categorization, but it really doesn't, process your emails and screen your emails proactively. It sort of sits there and waits. And again, you have to come in, ask it to do something, figure out what to ask it to do. And, it doesn't necessarily have an opinion the way that Forage does. We have embedded our philosophy and our opinion about like how to screen email in those prompts, in those evals that we've created. And that is a lot more opinionated than what Gmail is going to be able to do for 2 billion users. They change the color of the compose button and everybody freaks out, right? They can easily alienate 100 million people with any change to the service. And so they're going to be very hesitant to do that. Whereas we can be more opinionated because we only have to serve our customers, and people either like what we're doing or they don't. Turns out, a lot of people who try it really like it. And so, we can be way more aggressive about the way that we reduce your inbox.
Yeah, opportunity costs and having it fully automated is definitely a real thing. Those are pros for sure. One question that I had for you too, what about the data privacy aspect? I'm sure you get this
Mhm.
question all the time of using a third-party AI tool right inside your email inbox.
Yeah, I mean, there's that reasonable question again. It's something I think about a lot. I think that there's two ways to look at this. There's one, which is, if you're going to use a third-party mail client or a third-party AI-enabled tool of any kind on your email, you're sort of opting into a certain level of, a certain you're opting into like having that operating on your email, right? And so everyone has to follow these Google verified, standards. We have to go through third party security audits, which we do regularly. We have to have our privacy policy approved and displayed, and we have to follow that. And the risk of not following that is that we lose our ability to build on Gmail, which kills the business. And so, if you're comfortable with using any service, then Forage is going to follow the same standards that everyone else is following. And then the other way to look at it is that, Forage specifically, we are going a little bit of an extra mile over what we've seen other people do, where we have an option that's on by default to not process your personal person-to-person emails at all. So we have a non-AI enabled filter that will do the first triage, and it will discard anything that we think is a personal email and before sending the rest of your like transactional emails, newsletters, promotions, those kinds of things to the AI. And so we just took like an extra step on top of what we were really required to do to add that level of privacy so that you don't have to do that. As we add additional features that can handle those personal emails, that'll be an opt-in thing where if you want those features, you can opt into that. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very well explained there. Another feature, you might have mentioned this and I missed it, is Forage Mail also generates TLDR summaries for different email newsletters. So while that's a pretty cool feature and I'm subscribed to a lot of things and a lot of things I don't want to be subscribed to, I guess what is your response to email marketers who kind of rely on these newsletters and say like, Richie, you're going to kill my open rates, you're going to kill my, sales and click-through rates. Like, what is your response to all of that?
Yeah, again, there's multiple ways to look at this. So if you're worried about people actually reading your newsletter, what we found is that most people don't read newsletters. They want to, they aspirationally have them in there, but they don't read them. They don't get the gist of it. So if you're looking to get people to actually read the content and get the gist of what you're putting out there, we actually improve that because now you're getting these TLDRs that you can actually skim versus having to open up the full email and skim it. And, it's not really, it's always in the way. And so people end up just like archiving. And that's what we saw in our research. Most people just like, I'll just archive all of these. They don't even look at them. So one, if you're just trying to get the word out and have people understand what you're talking about and build your fan base that way, we're helping. Second is like at all times, Forge is going to be a minority of internet users. And so the impact on your open rate is not going to be, massive. Like everyone in the world is not using Forage. And the other thing is, the other way to look at it is that there's a difference of like how open rates are calculated. And a lot of them include automated opens, which are now happening. Many mail clients are doing these automated opens. When we open an email, like that sometimes triggers an automated open. And so we're not necessarily having that impact on every open that we do. Like when our AI goes in to look at it, we're opening the email. And so depending on how your platform calculates it, we may or may not be having an impact at all. And then those are the main things. There's other things I could say, but yeah.
Yeah. One specific question I would have is like the prioritization element of this. I'm assuming I haven't used Forge Mail, so it's hard for me to say this. I'm assuming that you would set, hey, these types of emails from these senders are priorities versus, these types of emails from these senders aren't priorities. How is Forage using AI to help you prioritize in the inbox?
Yeah. So what we pride ourselves on is being really great out of the box. So unlike a lot of other tools where you have to spend that time really training and setting up rules before you start seeing value, Forge has embedded opinions in our we call it a priority filter that is pretty good, like actually very good. It's like 97% accurate. And we optimize for, we'd rather something be say it's a priority and it wasn't. So that 3% is like false positives, which is another opinion that we've embedded in the AI. And so that's one thing, is that it works great out of the box. Two is that you can provide additional rules at any level. So you can provide a rule at a category level. Okay, everything from this category, handle it this way. Or everything from this sender, handle it this way. Whether that means auto archiving it, putting it in the trash, always putting it in your inbox, or always putting it in your summary. And so you sort of have various levels that you can do. And we also have additional things like, things from this domain name have these words in the subject line, right? All of that stuff is available to you via custom filters in Forage. And so you sort of have many different ways that you can control the flow of emails. And we're providing additional ones you don't get in Gmail because we're doing this like more granular categorization of emails. It's not just promotions and updates. It's also alerts, billing, newsletters, social, travel, right? We're breaking down to smaller categories, which means you get that additional category level control. And then anything else, we're continuing to add additional ways to personalize it. So soon you'll be able to write your own custom filters using prompts and other things like that, which will just give you, even more control. And our goal is to let you have full control over your email using AI, because that's the new thing. You could always do Gmail metadata filters, but semantically processing those emails is a whole new thing, and it provides so much more flexibility.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you guys are integrated with Gmail, of course. Maybe I missed this too. Are you guys in Outlook? Are you in Apple Mail? Are you in these other providers too?
At the moment, we only support Gmail addresses. That's just the first one we went with based on the customers that we saw were
Right.
interested in the product.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm saying as time goes on, maybe this is I'm in the cybersecurity kind of that world with a couple affiliate sites that I run. What would your response be to someone who says, what if there's a shift in people moving towards like email service providers, Proton Mails, Start Mail, right? I'm just listing two off the top of my head. How would a tool
Yeah.
like Forage Mail be able to support more private email providers in the future?
Yeah, it's a good question. Honestly, it really depends on what those providers allow as far as the hooks that we can get into
Yeah,
those
yeah, yeah.
services. Right now, things like Proton Mail don't allow that. I do think that people are accustomed to having multiple email addresses for different purposes. So I use like a high privacy email provider for certain things. And I don't use it for other things because I want that integration. I want the ability to use third-party tools. And I think that's something that people are accustomed to. They have a work email and they have a personal email, and it just extends further that way. So I think that when someone moves to a privacy focused thing, they're often doing it for a certain subset of services or accounts. Only you're like super privacy conscious, just like that's their primary priority, are moving everything over and sacrificing connectivity to all these other tools and options. And so
Yeah.
I think it's it's a certain kind of person that moves over there, and that's generally a minority, but it's also even people who don't have a privacy first lens for like all of their data, they still will use these privacy first providers for a certain subset of services. And so I think that we can survive even that growing trend by, serving the people who are sort of interested in those third party services.
And I agree with that. It's definitely a minority of the population going over to those private email providers. One question that I had for you, this is more kind of a general email AI related question. What do you say to, with the flood of AI spam and, AI email spam and this and that? What do you say to, potentially open rates declining? We now have Gmail coming out with that auto unsubscribe or that unsubscribe tab. I don't know if you've seen that, where you can go down a list and
Mm-hmm.
just unsubscribe from all the newsletters you forgot you subscribed to or were opted into without even knowing about it. Where do you see AI kind of impacting email and I guess email marketing as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, email is the most durable protocol that we have, right? It's been around. It was the
Not
first
dead,
one.
far from it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And there's been many attempts to kill email, right? And maybe email has been killed in certain subsets of communication, like in intra workplace communication. But as far as like email's ability to be resilient to all changing trends, I'm very optimistic about that. It's actually one of the things that makes me most interested in working on email, because it's just integrated with everything. And, email open rates are already questionable, because a lot of the email clients, like even Apple Mail and these other clients, like they're spoofing opens in order to
Right.
like look at things. And so a lot of that is a cat and mouse game. And so like even, the product that we use to send emails out for our mailing list and for transactional emails for the product, they have a toggle where you can see like guaranteed human opens and then like likely bot opens, and then your real number is somewhere in the middle, and I think that's just like the nature of working on this protocol, and that comes with the benefits and trade-offs of any different technology.
Yeah. And I like the mission of what Forage Mail is accomplishing right now, just trying to improve productivity because everyone's busy, especially in the entrepreneurship world. As you and I both know, my inbox is flooded every day with, random sponsorship opportunities, and it's 20 people from the same product with different emails. And so if I can have a way to just sift through all that stuff, that's definitely ideal. And maybe Forage Mail is already doing this, but my next question for you would be, as AI agents become more integrated in the email
Mm.
space, what's to stop Gemini from texting me and saying, hey, Ryan, I removed these 10 emails. I left these ones, right? Where it's just fully autonomous to a certain point.
Yeah. I mean, in theory, Google can do anything, right?
Right.
And it's a common thing that you hear as a founder. Anything you're building on the internet, it's like, well, why wouldn't Google build this? And it's always possible, right? It's often the case that when big companies like that, whether it be Amazon or Google, build something that was proven out in a startup, they build the lowest common denominator version of that tool. And so they're trying not to be risky. They're probably not going as deep into that problem as anyone else. And so, whether it be agents or any other like integrations, in theory they can do anything, but they're probably not as heads down on that problem as a startup. And so for the average user, which is like just your average person who has an email account, which is everybody, right? They might solve something, but for anyone who's like has the appetite to pay for a service, they probably have a bit of a higher expectation use case. And often the startup is able to maintain market share for that customer because the lowest common denominator solution is not necessarily working. And so the other thing to think about is that AI, unlike other technologies that we've seen in SaaS over the last call it like 10 years, AI incurs a cost on every call that is higher. And when you're Google and you have 2 billion users who are receiving 100 emails a day, you can't just like do things automatically, because that's immediately, even if it's 2/10 of a penny to process an email, times 2 billion people, even if everybody only receives one email a day, that's a lot of money, right? And so you can only offer it to paid accounts, and paid accounts are, we've already seen like the Google Workplace subscription doesn't cover Gemini. You have to get the additional like business plus plan. And so once you're in the game of like comparing now, okay, well, I'm going to pay for this. Well, what else is out there? Now the customer is in a shopping, situation where Google is obviously going to get default distribution, but customer who's like actually looking around for like the best solution for them, they're saying, okay, well, this is going to cost me this. Like, what else is out there? And now you're in the game. And so I think it's really easy to think like, oh, Google can just do this and distribute. And yes, of course they have an advantage, but for that high expectation customer, they often have additional needs that require a more focused and specialized lens.
So what's next for Forage Mail then? Just kind of preparing yourself if Google, let's just say, were to
Yeah.
do something that ideally they would buy you out and just rebrand you and give you a pay cut, right? But knowing big tech companies like Google, probably not the case. What is, I guess, your guys' roadmap to help kind of mitigate these possibilities in the future?
Yeah, I mean, what we see is that email, one of the reasons we're so excited about email is just because it is the centerpiece for a lot of workflows, whether it be for solopreneurs or small business owners or startup founders. At the end of the day, like everything flows through your email, maybe except for intra workplace communication, like I said before, which is covered by Slack. And so we think that there's like lots of opportunities to say, okay, like let's carve out individual workflows that are common across business owners and founders, and start to really build dedicated workflows for that can start taking a lot more work off your hands with email as the trigger. And so we can integrate with other services, but we can also start doing things using the context and information in your email and also other data sources. So we think email is a great place to start because it's like a high pain, high frustration area for a lot of people. And it's also universal. And it also has a lot of the context needed to make decisions autonomously.
I should have asked you this towards the beginning, but now I'm just curious. What was the light bulb moment for Forage Mail? I didn't do too much research on your background, but I'm assuming you've been in the startup entrepreneurship world for a while now. What was that light bulb moment where I'm like, oh my God, Forage Mail, like let's get an MVP, let's get going. What was that for you?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've built a number of different startups, different products, and I've worked on across a lot of different, frontier tech categories, whether it be blockchain or crypto or healthcare or cannabis. At one point, I did a couple contracts in cannabis, and no matter how advanced the technology I was working on, I was still using email. And I was still using email to run my business. And it was still like a core technology that I was interacting with every day. And with our last product, we were building like a website where you could discover what was happening in like a niche community online. And even then, one of our best parts of our platform was the emails that we would send out. And that was like one of our highest engaged things. Like, wow, even in this frontier industry, email is still a strong channel. And so we started thinking, well, with LLMs, everything's up for grabs, and email is unstructured data, which is where LLMs shine. And it's also this core technology that's widely adopted. People are already using different clients to view their email differently. LLMs can provide additional level of abstraction. Like, there's so much opportunity there. And so we started with this invisible email assistant that just plugs into your Gmail and modifies your Gmail experience. And that's building out the brain that then we can use to populate any type of experience that we can come up with to help with a given workflow or your overall email experience, with LLMs as that middleware that really transform the information that's coming in.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely good insight there that you have. I'm going to end this off here with a few rapid fire questions. I always like
Sure.
to hear my guests who are deep in the AI world to hear their takes on these types of topics. And this is going to be more broad, not particularly towards email. But the first one I have for you, Richie, is what is your big AI prediction in the next 6 to 12 months, just holistically?
I think predictions are overrated, but I also
I
think
agree.
that one thing I think that there's a lot of hype around agents. I think it's a harder problem than people are giving credit to solving across different domains. One of the things that AI has proven really good at is code gen. And so it seems like everyone's optimizing around that. And so I think that the I think that the industry generally is going to have a lot of progress on code gen, even though it already has had a lot of progress, but that other AI agent workflows will take a little longer than people think.
You mean, Richie, I can't go steal that 100 node N8N workflow I just saw on Twitter and upload the JSON file, and then my problems are all solved and I have a business running from the beach? I can't do that.
Uh, Maybe not yet, but soon.
I gotta throw some shade at what I call the N8N bros. And I like N8N, but they
Mm.
just got like a little cult following now. And so I just say N8N bros to kind of label them.
Yeah, I think that there's like an interesting thing that's happening with Twitter specifically, where everyone's incentivized to be like, this is changing everything and it's happening so fast. And you could just build a 50K MRR startup in 2 seconds with this 8NN or, any other workflow. And when I've actually dug into a lot of these workflow builders, I think they're a lot harder to get working than people give it credit for. And often the workflows I see demoed don't really cover the edge cases, the retries, the things that happen in a real world use case. And so it's like, yes, in theory, this can serve this workflow, but it doesn't necessarily in the real world have the resiliency that you need to really set it and forget it or replace a human, right? And so I think that these things will mature. Like, I'm not bearish on them as a
Right.
general direction, but I think that there's a current disconnect between what we hear and what we see, and everyone's incentivized to increase that gap, right? The companies themselves, the models companies, right? They're making insane predictions about what percent of code and job loss and all this stuff, and everyone's incentivized to drive that gap between reality and hype up. And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, because hype cycles serve a function of coalescing talent and driving a lot of progress and a lot of experimentation in a short period of time. I'm not really complaining about it. I'm just saying it exists.
I saw a funny infographic. It was like AI hype cycle, and it was a big circle. It said ChatGPT, Anthropic, Gemini, Grok, and then it went back to ChatGPT. I was like, that is so true. That's literally the AI hype cycle every year, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, when you have the distribution that OpenAI has and the name recognition, at the end of the day, like, you'll have individual providers that will come out with something and they have an edge for maybe 3-4 months max, before it gets really integrated. And then, ChatGPT just has so many more touch points with customers that, they can adopt something even late and come in, just like Apple with the iPhone, right? Like,
Right.
they have the iPhone, they don't need to be first, because they have the hardware in your pocket. And so they can come out later with something polished and interesting. And that's an interesting prediction. I think Apple will be there.
They've
I
been kind
think
of a
that,
laggard in the AI space. But yeah, to your point, I mean, they
big
always seem
time,
to figure something out.
big time. And everyone hates on them so much because people love to like come for the king. But I think that, everyone says, oh, Apple Intelligence was vaporware. But when I watched like the interview with Craig Federighi, and he pointed out that like they made a 100-minute presentation and they shipped 97 minutes of that presentation. And everyone's focused on the 3 minutes that they didn't ship. And yeah, they're Apple. They should have shipped the 3 minutes too. They should have shipped more than that, honestly. But it's still a bit overblown how much people are coming for them. And I think that once they figure it out, once they step in, it's going to be amazing because they have that hardware, they have the software integration, they have the local models, they have the chips, and I think people are sleeping on them.
Yeah, I like that prediction. In terms of the AI race in general, I was going to ask you who you think is going to win the AI race, which probably is a different question. I see Google winning this long term. I don't know how they're going to get beaten with the infrastructure and the data and everything else that they have. I think XAI and Microsoft are the dark horses here. I look at Microsoft's equity in OpenAI as a big reason for that. And then obviously XAI, you have Elon, richest person in the world, has a lot of political power, has a massive distribution network. So I see like those two kind of being the dark horses. Just like very quickly, who do you think is going to win this quote unquote AI race in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you that like Google probably is sitting in the best position, especially if you just look at how fast they've been able to like catch up, right? Because they were DeepMind. Everyone thought that they were just going to be, that's it. They're the winners.
They were laughed at for a while.
Right. And exactly. It's the same thing with Apple, right? Like they are laughed at because it's like you should have been running away with this from the beginning, but they've made such substantial progress and now they're acquiring talent and all this stuff. So, I think that a lot of this with AI, like if AI specifically is going to split the crowd, where like it favors your super small players because now they can compete with the mid-sized players, like whether it's like a solopreneur or a small team, now they can really punch way above their weight. But it also favors the biggest players because they have the models, they have the infrastructure, right? Those are that everyone's ultimately paying them, and they have the deep pockets to be able to acquire and retain talent. And so it's really like that middle that gets sucked out. And you have OpenAI, which they have their relationship with Microsoft, but there's some trickiness there, and so you also have cool products like the browser company like Dia, which I'm using right now. I love, and it's like how long can they retain that edge, right? I think it's just a fascinating landscape, and you also have Anthropic, who's like so much more focused on safety, it seems, and maybe that's just reputational, maybe that's not like as real, but I think that ultimately everyone will find their niche. And it's like, I think it's winner take all to an extent, or maybe over certain markets. But at the end of the day, like some industries are going to really need certain things. And we're just going to, see that sort of become specialized as we uncover what those needs are. But right now we don't know what they are.
I agree with that completely. Well, Richie, this has been fun. Where can people follow you online to learn more about Forage Mail as well?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Forage Mail is foragemail.com. I'm on Twitter at x.com/Richie Bonilla. And we're also on X at x.com/Forage Mail. That's probably the best places to keep up with us.
Awesome. I'll leave all those links in the video description below. Richie, thanks again for hopping on. And thanks again to everyone watching or listening to this edition of AI Rabbit Holes. Be sure to tune in again next time.